My name is Tessa N, and I am an addict. Welcome to GRCNA 39.5 New Possibilities Arise, and welcome to our workshop on the 12 traditions of NA. Regarding anonymity, when joining a virtual meeting, you will need to keep your video turned off to guarantee your anonymity. If you turn on your video, you are choosing to be seen by other participants. You can also change your name or switch to first name plus last initial to protect your identity. Let's open this meeting with a moment of silence followed by the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity
to
accept
accept
things that I cannot change,
the
the
courage
courage
to
to
change
change
things I can,
and
and the
the
wisdom to
wisdom
know
to
the
know
difference.
the difference. Welcome to Georgia Region's first virtual convention, GRCNA 39.5 New Possibilities Arise. Our intentions for this virtual convention is to make available to our fellowship a weekend of recovery, celebration, and fun. We hope that all addicts receive the NA message of recovery while they are participating in this event. It is our hope that the message we carry may truly let everyone know that NA is a place to recover and that no addict seeking recovery need die from addiction. Workshop participation guidelines. Please dress appropriately on camera. Please keep your microphone on mute unless you are asked to unmute by the host or co-host. If you have a question or need general assistance during the workshop, please contact the host or one of the co-hosts via direct message and chat. If there is time after our workshop speakers finish, participants may have an opportunity to share their experience, strength, and hope on the workshop topic. If you would like to share after the speakers are finished, please raise your hand, your virtual hand, and your virtual hand can be raised by going to the reactions window on your computer or by going to the more section on your phone. You will be called on to share and unmuted or asked to unmute yourself by one of the hosts if time permits. Please limit such shares to 3 to 4 minutes. I've asked volunteers for our readings.
So volunteer or Tessa, you can pick.
My name's Kashar, I'm an addict.
Pick Kashar.
How it works, if you want what we have to offer and are willing to make the effort to get it, then you're ready to take certain steps. These are the principles that made our recovery possible. 1, we admitted that we were powerless over our addiction, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, we humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, we made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, we made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, we continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to addicts and to practice these principles in all our affairs.
Yes, Kashar. Hey, my name's Paul and I'm an addict.
Paul.
Hey, the 12 traditions of NA. We keep what we have only with vigilance, and just as freedom for the individual comes from the 12 steps, so freedom for the group springs from our traditions. As long as the ties that bind us together are stronger than those that would tear us apart, all will be well. 1, our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends on NA unity. 2, for our group purpose, there is but one ultimate authority, a loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants, they do not govern. 3, the only requirement for membership is the desire to stop using. 4, each group should be autonomous, except in matters affecting other groups or NA as a whole. 5, each group has but one primary purpose, to carry the message to the addict who still suffers. 6, an NA group ought never endorse, finance, or lend the NA name to any related facility or outside enterprise. Thus problems of money, property, or prestige divert us from our primary purpose. 7, every NA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. 8, Narcotics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional, but our service centers may employ special workers. 9, NA as such had never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those they serve. 10, Narcotics Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues, hence the NA name had never be drawn into public controversy. 11, our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and film. 12, anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities.
Our first speaker is Lisa S. from Nicholson, Georgia.
Hey, thank you so much. My name is Lisa, I'm an addict. Tessa, thank you. You're doing a great job. And thanks to everybody. I got a little tickled when it said Nicholson because I don't know if that's where I'm from right now. I moved in November and I've not gotten settled enough. I got 1 foot there and 1 foot here, but I can tell you where both feet have always been, and that is with the Georgia Regional Convention of Narcotics Anonymous. I am a huge GRCNA fan. Just a short little about me. I have to remember my clean time. I think I've got 26 years now, and I've missed one convention in 26 years. And let me tell you, that year sucked. It was one of the worst years of my recovery. And, you know, so I don't know if they are relation to one another or not, but I have been a part of GRCNA and supporting GRCNA since I had a year clean. I mean, I love fellowship and conventions, and I love parties. It was one of the things that I was afraid I was going to miss when I got here. And so when I went to my first GRCNA, it was like, oh yeah, I want to be a part of this. And when Mike asked me about, you know, talking about their traditions, because I got so involved early on, the traditions became really important. And he asked me about a month ago, and I was like, oh yeah, I love the traditions. Of course, you know, come this morning, I'm like, oh my God, I'm not prepared. Let me read, let me study. And then I have to remind myself that I know the traditions. You know, they have become first nature as much as the steps are. I've just worked more steps and I have physically sat down and wrote about the traditions. And, you know, traditions are normally not a heavy attended workshop. It's not something, there's not a whole lot of drama with traditions like there are like the relationships or some of the other things that we can go to. And, but I can tell you what, the traditions have changed my life, not only in the rooms, but outside of the rooms. And, you know, kind of going back to my first experience with the traditions, you know, when I first got clean and I came into the meetings, I don't know about anybody else, but you know, when the readings were read, I could really hear what they were saying. You know, when they were talking about who's an addict and what is the NA program. And when they got to the steps, I was a little like, and when they got to the traditions, all I heard was, wah, 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 wah. I mean, it all sounded like Greek to me. It did not sound any interest to me at all. It sounded like business. It sounded like something that wasn't going to involve me. And, you know, I got clean in Warner Robins, Georgia, and very early on, 60 days clean was asked to be a group secretary. And from that point on, the tradition started becoming important in my life. And I started having to learn about them. And I learned more about the traditions because of you guys pissing me off. Like people not acting like I think they should act or doing something. And I had these flashbacks when I was making some notes about this one guy, God love him, Kenneth Anthony. And, he was just crawled up under my skin and picked it. And I remember, being told, hey, he has just as much right to be here. And I'm like, well, he's not following the rules and he's not doing this and that. And that's when I started getting, it was suggested to me to start turning to the traditions. And a couple of weeks ago, it was so cool. I went on a meeting it's a Zoom meeting only, Clarksville group. And one of my first mentor, Charles A. with the traditions, who now lives in somewhere up north, I think, he was on that meeting. And so I thought it was just really cool to see somebody. I used to go to his house when I had about a year clean and sit at his table, and he would school me on the traditions. Like, I need to know about these things because I am upholding the NA law. That was kind of where I was coming from. And I was also getting real involved. And then one other thing that really affected me that I have held on to is hearing a speaker early in recovery go through the traditions, a man with a lot of clean time who I got to meet years later, about how you can apply them in your personal life. And because it didn't make any sense to me that the traditions could be a part of my personal life. I mean, they're just for our NA groups and stuff like that. And he went through how you could apply them in your life. And it was just amazing to me. I was like, well, I didn't know I could use this. And when I moved to North Georgia, there was a couple of guys I used to argue with that said, no, they're only applicable to Narcotics Anonymous. They're not applicable to anything else. And so, take what you need, leave the rest. What worked for you and what worked for me is to learn. Through learning how to apply traditions in Narcotics Anonymous, I was able to take them and apply them in other areas of my life that have benefited other areas of my life. So whether they were meant to be used that way or not, don't matter. That's what's worked for me. And when you get involved in service, it's almost imperative, for me, that I also got involved with the traditions and started learning about the traditions. I've heard one of the most classic sayings are, the steps are for me, the traditions are for us. The traditions help us from, the steps help me from killing myself, and the traditions help me from killing you. And, there's a lot to that. But I think the important part of the traditions focuses on, the principles of how to apply to a larger group altogether. And, I don't really need to sit around and apply the traditions to myself when I'm home alone, which I am a lot now. But when I go to work, that's a different story. When I show up for a meeting, part of other groups today, those have taught me how to, just accept other people, just so many different things. And so probably the first tradition, and I'm going to try to touch on them, and I meant to start a stopwatch, but I'm sure you guys will wave a hand. I forgot. But probably the first tradition that I got taught about that made sense to me was about the seventh tradition. It was the first one that was kind of obvious when you walked into the meeting. They're passing around a basket. I'm like, this is just like church. Pass around, trying to take your money. Of course, none of us are putting a lot of money in the basket. Still don't. $1, it's not a lot of money. Which is kind of funny because since we've been on Zoom, I donate way more than I did in person, which does not make any sense. It's just easy. I never have cash when I'm at the meeting. I just PayPal a large sum once a month to my group and done and get it, Anyway, they started talking about that seventh tradition and what that meant. And, because I got involved with service early on, I learned it was about being self-supporting, and we have bills to pay. You don't think about that when you're trying to get clean. You're just trying to get clean and show up. You know, I kind of figured that the city was paying, or the county, the community, the government was paying for our meeting space because they want us to be clean and off the streets. You know, I never realized that it would be like a self-supporting, like we all did this together. And so that was probably one of the first things I learned, or the first tradition I learned about was the seventh tradition, which is pretty cut and dry, but it can get complicated at times. And I've seen it get complicated since I've been here. Like my parents could not donate money and they didn't understand. Like I was like, no, you can't put money in the basket. And I try to explain to them, you know, what that's about, or other family members wanting to give money. You know, we started a home group when I first moved to North Georgia, and the pastor would come in and he would want to like buy everybody books and do things like that. And we were like, no, we got this. And, you know, but that was taught to me about the reason that we do that is that, you know, Narcotics Anonymous, we do live by the traditions in the fellowship, and we don't go by other entities outside policies or how they do things, and we want to keep it that way. So that's why, you know, one of the big reasons we're self-supporting. And when I started realizing that individually, like when I'm self-supporting, I get to make my own decisions too. You know, if I'm over here living off my mom and dad, or, you know, having somebody always taking care of me, it's hard to, you know, to stand up for yourself and to make your own decisions. And I like doing that. I like to be self-supporting today. If anything, I struggle with the other side is like, don't help me. I don't need your help. I got this in any way. You know, so I was really grateful for that lesson early on about being self-supporting, and in more areas than just money, you know, about also taking care of my own business instead of trying to get somebody else to do things for me. And all of that turned around again, even though it is a tradition, it turned around to be such a valuable thing for me because it gave me self-respect and self-worth. Like I knew going into the group that I was a part of this group and we were doing this thing. And, you know, so it was just a very powerful tradition early on. And probably the next one that really affected me, quite honestly, was the third tradition. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop using. And, you know, for me, I got very frustrated, and I think it's just part of my personality. I'm like a rule follower, you know, and I want everybody to be nice and respectful and get along. And I would come into the meetings and there were some people that weren't there for the same reason. You know, like, I don't even know why they were there, because back then there wasn't a lot of paper signers. We didn't have a lot of court order people back in the early 90s. And, you know, that I remember anyway, just a few, not like there is now. But people would come and they would be disruptive in the meeting, or they would be messed up, you know, or, you know, I guess I can understand this. I mean, probably for the first year, you know, I didn't make a meeting without a face full of makeup and my hair done and some hoochie mama clothes. And, you know, I wasn't going for the message. I never did go to the conventions for the message the first year. It was always about the party, and all the conventions I went to, but starting to learn that it really doesn't matter why somebody's there, you know. Even this bit about, you know, I have a hard time with the whole qualifying thing. I don't even know why we say people need to qualify. I mean, God, what the hell are you doing here if you don't qualify? You know, why would you sit in an NA meeting or speak at a function if you weren't a member? I mean, who's going to do that? Like, you know, somebody off the street, yeah, I'm going to come talk. But anyway, it's just a personal little peeve. You know, but the third tradition helps me keep everybody on the same playing field. That it doesn't matter why anybody's here or how they got here. You know, the only requirement is a desire to stop using. And, you know, I've had to do that, use that at work. You know, I have had to use that at work with some people. I'm in a new job now, and, you know, I've really been focusing on how I got comfortable in my last job, because not everyone has the same work ethic. It's funny to me that I'm the drug addict in recovery and my work ethic is of higher standards than most everybody that I work with. You know, I mean, I just can't get over these girls watching Netflix on their phone while they're at work. What are you, with their little things hidden in their ears? You know, and I work at a law firm. It's just foreign to me. Like, you're at work, you work when you're at work, you know? So anyway, at the same time, you know, it's just not my stuff. And I can let somebody else's behavior become my stuff and ruin my day and have control over my life so easily. And I just, you know, I constantly think about, okay, well, you know, they're just here, they're working. That ain't got nothing to do with me. What they're doing ain't got nothing to do with me, and get back to me. Which then leads me into the first tradition. And I would have to say the first tradition is my favorite. It is my favorite tradition. It's probably the one that I use in my personal life more than any other tradition that there is. And I know some people are new and may not know what it is right offhand. And I'm going to read it. I got my books here. Our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends on NA unity. And, you know, and it's kind of like when you get things coming at you from all different directions, you know, you're supposed to be paying attention. So I got asked to do this workshop. I'm also meeting with my sponsees once a month by Zoom, trying to hold us together through, you know, through all the pandemic and everything that's been going on. And each month we do something different. And last month we studied the first tradition. And I also went to a meeting like that next week on the first tradition. And it just reminds me again, you know, it says personal recovery depends on NA unity. And so many times I can get away from that when I'm not practicing that third tradition, when I'm looking at what everybody else is doing, when I am causing or doing things to be disunified. And I'm struggling at work with this because I do real good in NA. I don't get caught up in the gossip and the chit chat like I used to. I hold way too many secrets. Every now and again, I wish I could just dump some secrets and not hold secrets for people. But at my job now, you know, these girls all be talking bad about each other. I mean, constantly taking everybody's inventory, and I get caught up in a moment and I walk away and I'm like, man, I did it again. I don't want to be involved in that, you know, and I'm not going to do this tomorrow, you know, and I try real hard to keep my place. But, you know, remembering that this is a we thing is just imperative for a bunch of self-centered addicts. If we didn't have the traditions, I don't know where we would be. If we didn't have this tradition, I don't know where the fellowship would have gone. For us to be able to come together for the common good, and how that will set aside our personal differences, our self-centeredness, and just like coming together to put this convention on. It doesn't matter who gets along or what your history is or any of that. We're coming together to carry a message to the addict who's still suffering, whoever that addict may be, whether it may be me, you, a newcomer, an old timer, who knows. And when we come together for a common purpose, it's a beautiful thing that happens. All the other stuff just seems to kind of go away, you know. And I even, like, I noticed this at my job. Like, everybody's petty as hell, but let us come up on a deadline we're trying to meet, and everybody's trying to help each other. I've noticed this, you know, in my personal relationships with my partner. I mean, we can be like crabby at each other, but we go to work together. Earlier today, we cleaned out the entire garage. We're getting ready to paint and pressure wash it and do some work. And we're out there working together, and, you know, we're getting along great. We have a common thing that we're trying to work on together. And in order for me to personally recover, I need to be a part of that common welfare. I need to be a part of the solution and not the problem. I need to be thinking about the we. And so for me, this was, you know, a really big deal. I had lived in North Georgia for 20 years. I moved when I had 5 years clean. and up to Nicholson, was where I last lived. And I made the decision to come back to my hometown, to Warner Robins. And it wasn't just about leaving and moving. It was changing jobs, only because of the pandemic. So I still have my home group now. But when I went to make this decision, you know, I had to consider it wasn't just about me. It started with me, but it was also about my mother, my daughter, my partner. You know, even though we didn't live together, this was going to put us hours apart. My sponsees, which some live just, right down the road from me. I had several sponsees. It was about my home group. I did have to think about that common welfare and how it was going to affect all of us. And, and sometimes me doing what's right for me does affect the common welfare. And it may look negatively at first, if that makes any sense, but it turned out to be a good thing. I know that some of my sponsees really struggled right after I moved, and they were just like scared to death what's going to happen. But I think they realized that I'm much happier and doing better, and it was a good decision for my family. And so in turn, they're happy for me, and they have respect for that, if that makes any sense. So sometimes even doing that one thing that's hard to do, or standing up for yourself when no one else is the right thing for the common welfare. We all have to take that turn and say our voice. And, the next tradition that probably stands out the most is the 12th tradition. And I think it's probably the biggest one that is confused more than anything. Some of the traditions are just really point blank. I went through them again this morning. I'm a study. I like to have my books. I like to be prepared. I may not follow any of it, but I'm going to have it just in case I need it. And, some of them are just that straightforward, about the not affiliation. Each group is autonomous and what some of those things mean. But some of them, can be interpreted differently. And that 12th tradition, I think, has been interpreted so many different ways. And I was actually at a workshop yesterday where a guy was talking about anonymity, and I was like, wow. He said, anonymity doesn't mean we're all the same. And I was like, I thought that's what it meant. He goes, because we're not. And my ears perked up. I'm all about learning something new. I love to get new lessons. And, and I thought, we say that a lot, but the book doesn't even talk about that. It doesn't mean we're all the same. We are all different, which is one of the greatest things about Narcotics Anonymous, that we collectively, we have this amazing village or tribe of people that can help anybody that walks in the door, because we're so different. But what it means is that we all have the same equal right to recover. We are, at the end of the day, nameless and faceless. We are all just addicts. And, I just found his message to be real powerful and a great reminder that I got to take that back into all the traditions. And, it says it is the foundation for all of our traditions, and how imperative it is. We just aren't always going to like each other. Personalities are different. Sometimes they don't click, and that's really okay. It's okay for me to like somebody today. I'm not one to run around and say, I might not like you, but I love you. It's just not me. I tell you what I will do is I will respect you. I will respect you. If you need me, I'll be there. I may not like you, but I'll be there if you need me. I will have respect for you, and I will mind my manners around you. And, Narcotics Anonymous taught me that. And what great lessons to take out into your life when you learn these lessons in the rooms. Early in recovery, I was a secretary, and I had a chance to get a job where I worked at a city, and I assisted the city clerk, and I knew exactly what to do and how to take minutes and how things worked. And, even though they don't know about the traditions, I could bring the traditions in. and into the setting of wherever I'm going, even raising my child, you know, talking to her about how we have to think about other people and what we have to do. The traditions have been a part of my household since I very first came into Narcotics Anonymous. And, you know, and I'm so grateful for them. And probably the last tradition that I'm going to talk about, of course, I'd love to talk about all of them, is the 11th tradition that the fellowship is, let me read it because I am a terrible quoter. Our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. And I can remember early on learning about this. I got invited to speak at like some DARE program back in right after I got clean. And I remember being all nervous, like I'm not supposed to say NA, right? And that's how I learned that it's just important to say recovery, you know, and how important it is that I don't attach Narcotics Anonymous, my face, my person, to NA to the public. Because I'm not always on my best behavior. You know, I made 2 phone calls this morning. One was to a manager at Kroger and the other was to a manager at Panera. I never get on people's ass. This morning, I was not a happy camper. You messed up my whole grocery store order after you canceled it last night, and I had to come back and get it today. And the girl at the drive-through window was just rude. And I just wasn't in the this morning. You know, so sometimes I don't let people be who they are and where they're at. You know, it's just how it is. And so it's real important that I'm not over there, you know, going F you at somebody with an NA shirt on. You know, it's real important that also that I remember as somebody with some time in recovery, after you get about a year clean, you can trust people are coming in the rooms, they're watching you and they're watching how you act and they're watching how you behave. And, you know, and I want to believe that I always do the right thing for me, but sometimes I don't. Sometimes I just do the right thing because I know other people are watching, you know, and I would rather be a role model than someone who is, you know, igniting bad behavior. Because it's, you know, we've watched it left and right. You know, most recently, you know, I'm not on Facebook, and it's just by personal choice. And it's probably because I'd lose my mind if I was on there. But, you know, I have some sponsorship family that is struggling. I have a friend who's just struggling, you know, all because of stuff and personal opinions and things posted on Facebook that have got nothing to do with Narcotics Anonymous. And it saddens me, you know, it really does. You know, it's important that that I maintain my personal belief, but I don't need to come in and knock it over anybody's head, whether it be about any of my health or what I do for my health, or my mental health, or what religion I practice, or what politics I'm into, or any of that kind of stuff. Its place is not in here. What's in here is for us to carry a message, you know, about how any addict can lose the desire to use and stay clean. And the other thing I want to share for somebody new is I forget a lot of the quotes and a lot of the stuff that we talk about that, you know, that we hear comes out of the traditions. That whole little saying about any addict can lose the desire to use and stay clean. Again, I'm not quoting it right. It comes out of the traditions. I forget how much good stuff is in the traditions. So if you haven't read the traditions or given yourself a chance to read them, and you've been here for, you know, just even a month or two, I think if you go and read them now, they'll make a little more sense than when you've listened to them in the meetings. And, you know, I'm so grateful anytime that I get asked to speak or do anything like this. It's a great reminder for me. It's like I get a refresher and a lesson. And again, I just want to say you guys are doing a great job with this. I have attended several workshops and meetings, and I still felt the connection. I still felt the love of the fellowship coming through. I still heard the messages that I needed to hear. And I know a lot of work goes into it. I have a lot of respect and a lot of gratitude for Narcotics Anonymous and for the Georgia Regional Convention. And I'm just grateful. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you for sharing,
Thanks for
Lisa.
sharing, Lisa.
Yay.
Karen,
All right.
our second speaker is Karen S.
Hey, family, I'm Karen. I'm an addict.
Hi, Karen.
Thank you for asking me to do this. I appreciate it, Joshua. And Lisa, I love you. It's great to see you. We've been able to work conventions together, and I know how you apply the principles. I've seen it. And I will tell you that I got clean in August of 1995, so I celebrated 25 years in a pandemic. It was not the way I imagined to celebrate that milestone birthday, but it worked, and I'm still here. And when I got clean, I came in on a court slip, and there were a couple of things that I heard right off the bat. One was, yeah, I kind of saw the traditions as, well, that's a business thing. And then somebody told me, similar to what Lisa said, but they told me the steps are how I learned to live with me and the traditions are how I learned to live with you. And I thought, okay, I need to work with you and I need to live with you. My daughter was my roommate, and I've been avoiding me for a long time, so I need to learn about these traditions now. And the other tradition that I heard, which is my favorite, is the third tradition. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop using. One of the reasons was that I went to meetings that a lot of people from treatment centers came into, and they would share about how they were in this recovery house or that treatment center or whatever. And I thought you were going to make me go to one of those. That I had to do that in order to qualify to come to Narcotics Anonymous. And I didn't have insurance and I didn't have any money and I couldn't afford that. And I was like, oh shit, they're going to find out. And I don't want to go to one of those places. So I just kind of stayed real quiet for a little while, but then I heard that tradition and I was like, well, I don't know if I have a desire to stop using, but I sure as hell have a desire not to go back to jail and not to go back to that way of life. So maybe that's enough to qualify me to stay. And so along the way there, I went to, I would go to this women's meeting in a park, and it was a big park, and the women's meeting was over here, and there was a men's meeting at the other, like the opposite corner of the park. And I remember being in that meeting one day, and some guys walked up and said, is this the NA meeting? And a couple of people got up and was like, this is the women's meeting and you need to go to the men's meeting. And I was like, I didn't know why, but that felt wrong. Like it felt really wrong in my heart, but I didn't know why. And so after the meeting, I talked to my sponsor about it, and I was like, that seems so wrong to me, but I can't explain why. And she said, you need to go to a traditions meeting, and we're going to start studying the traditions. And so she directed me to a traditions study meeting. It was a women's oriented meeting, but there were times when guys would come in, and these women who had like double digits at the time, when I had a year or two clean, would say, come on in and sit down. Like they never turned anybody away. And that was really important to me. So she had me work the traditions in between my third step and my fourth step, because she wanted me to be able to apply those principles to myself. And what I had to do was I had to write 2 examples of how the tradition applied in the program in the Fellowship of Narcotics Anonymous, and 2 examples of how it applied in my own life. And so I was like, oh, okay, well, I can do number this and number that, and then I'll do number, and she's like, no, just like the steps, they're written in order for a reason. You need to do them in order. Okay. And so I used the how and why, and I really like that, because if you haven't read the traditions, and I understand if you haven't, but I strongly recommend it, just like Lisa said, the how and why really calls out the spiritual principles that underlie each of the traditions. And, you know, things like harmony and compassion and humility and fidelity, all these words. And there were a lot of those words, and I'm a big words person, but there were some I had to look them up because the context, you know, I understood them in a different context. And so I'd get out my dictionary and I'd look at all the definitions of a given word and go, oh, that's what they mean in this context. And this is how it applies in my life. You know, the one about the first tradition about unity, like I said, my daughter and I shared a house together. She was an adult and she had a choice, and we chose to live together. And there were times where, you know, we were very separate. We had separate lifestyles, we had separate jobs, but there were things that went on in the house that we had to do together, you know, because it affected both of us and it affected the unity and the harmony of our home. But the rest of the time we could be autonomous, you know, and so I learned how to apply the principles in that way. The seventh tradition was also, I had the same thoughts Lisa did. To fucking church, and they're going to make me tithe, and they're going to, you know, this, that, and the other thing. And then when I read it, and it talked about the freedom of being able to pay my own way, because when I got clean, I didn't have a lot of money. I didn't have a lot of money at all. And, you know, people would want to go out to dinner after a meeting, and I was like, well, I got to go home, because, and they knew I couldn't afford it. And somebody would say, well, come on, I'll buy you dinner. Why? You know, you must want something from me. And they would tell me, when you can, you do it for somebody else. And they meant it. And when I could afford it myself, I felt that freedom. I could eat what I wanted to eat. I remember going to a convention in Martha's Vineyard when I had about 3 years clean, almost 4 years clean. And I had enough money to buy my own lobster dinner, and it wasn't cheap. But man, it was the biggest lobster, and I ate every bit of that lobster, man. And my friends were like, you're really enjoying that, aren't you? And I was like, yeah, because first of all, it's really good. And second of all, I paid for it. I paid for it myself. And I don't have to not pay my rent in order to pay for this. I paid for it because I saved the money up to do this. That was a really big deal. I learned about prudent reserves because of this tradition and because of what we do as groups and as committees that hold events. I also learned that it's not a good idea for us to hold on to too much money. You know, I've seen groups that hold on to money all year long to put on a picnic and have fights among the home group members because, you know, maybe somebody forgot to account for this dime or that dollar. And I've seen it cause disunity, and I've seen it cause disruption, and I've seen it take over with that money, property, and prestige thing. And so, you know, I've watched the groups work through those issues and figure out that, okay, maybe we don't need to hold on to that much money because we're going to sell raffle tickets right before the event. We'll make the money that we need to cover the event, and we need to move that money along. You know, when I was treasurer of a group, that was the most stressful service position I've ever held in Narcotics Anonymous, because it was cash and it was in my hand. And I wasn't about to spend that money because I wanted to stay here, and I didn't want y'all to kick me out because I walked off with quarters from laundry. But there were a couple times where I didn't have change. I had the money, but I didn't have the quarters, and I didn't want to go to the wherever to get the change. And so I take the change out of the seventh tradition, but I put my bills in, you know, and I would drive to a meeting with that money in my car, and I was like, please God, don't let me get in an accident or something happen to my car, or let me get robbed or something on the way to the meeting or on the way back from the meeting, because I got this cash in my car. You know, I'm much happier being like a treasurer of an area where I have a checkbook. You know, I used to get confused about the 9th tradition. You know, we ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees. Isn't that kind of being organized? You know, but then the important part of that statement is that those service boards or committees are directly responsible to those that they serve. So, you know, the area is responsible to the groups. The area's got to come in and say, you know, here's what we did. You guys told us we wanted to hold this event or we wanted to do this thing, and we were going to spend this much money, and here's our receipts, and here's what we did, and if we went over, here's why, and you know, and that's really, really important when it comes to like bringing it into my life and into work. I am responsible to my team. You know, I lead a team of people. I don't govern them. You know, it's not quite the same at work where it's like, you know, it's not a democratic situation at work. If I'm your manager, I'm your manager, but I don't have to govern you. I've learned through Narcotics Anonymous and doing service that if I can guide you and share my experience with you, you're likely to succeed much better, because you're going to do it a little differently than I would. If I try to micromanage it, it's not going to come out the same because you're different. And God knows I don't want somebody micromanaging me. I get real rebellious about that. You know, I am super grateful that Narcotics Anonymous as a whole does not have an opinion on outside issues, because Lord knows last year there've been a lot of outside issues going on, a lot of opinions going on. And the one thing I can tell you is, and I don't have it right here in front of me, but there is, and somebody mentioned it in a previous workshop, my politics or my opinion on this situation or that situation has no, it is not Narcotics Anonymous's opinion. And, but if it affects my recovery, then I can share about it in a meeting. Now, I don't have to share where my political leanings are. I've learned how to share in a more general way that I have political opinions and something is impacting me and it's screwing up my head, or this situation that's going on in my community is stressing me out. And there were times during this past year where I didn't necessarily want to use. There were occasions where the thought came in and I was like, well, and I'm sitting here by myself. My husband's out working all day long, and what fun would that be? But there were times where I was like, I don't want to be here at all. And thank God for virtual meetings. Thank God that virtual meetings have been going on long before the pandemic. And there were people with that experience who ramped us up quicker than nobody ramped up to virtual as quick as we did. And I was able to go to meetings that, you know, at any time I needed to, and share that I don't want to be here right now. Like, I don't want to be here. And there were people that said, yeah, I know exactly how you feel. You know, I'm real grateful for that. The 11th tradition, and I appreciate what you shared about that, Lisa. And sometimes it seems like that's real confusing nowadays in the age of social media, you know, where, you know, I start seeing where, you know, let's break the stigma of recovery and all of that. And, you know, and all of a sudden I'm seeing like all these people saying I have X number of years clean, and I see all these celebrities and stuff. And it's like, the way I was brought up was that we don't have any poster children because we're addicts, and it doesn't matter how much time we might have, shit happens and we can use. And I absolutely would not want to be the face on a poster and then the face on a wanted poster. Okay. I would not want that to be reflected on Narcotics Anonymous, because Narcotics Anonymous has saved my life. It saved my life more than once in 25 years. So I get real confused about that. And I've always had this thing about anonymity at work, because I work in a field that it's not necessarily a good idea for people to know. I do have my little ring, you know, with my service symbol, and I have a couple of necklaces that have some stuff. but my necklaces I can put under my shirt, and they're not real obvious anyway. And I've had a couple of people ask me about them, and I'm like, oh, it's a spiritual symbol. That means I'm a square peg that fits in a round hole full of love. You know, I had a friend early in recovery who had a lot more clean time than I did, and I always share his situation where he went to a family barbecue, family reunion thing, and he and his brother had to go and buy more liquid refreshment for the family, and they went to a store and they bought that liquid refreshment, and he's carrying out like cases of it, right? And he gets back to the barbecue and stuff, and as he's setting it down, he realized that he's wearing this bright ass tie-dye shirt with this big ass NA emblem like the one behind Adam there. And he was like, oh my God. He just went, and it was on the front and the back, so you know it was not covered, and he was in this liquid refreshment store with this blazing NA symbol. And I was like, ooh, good thing to remember. I don't have bumper stickers on my car. I have a little service symbol up in the front of my car that can kind of reflects back on the seat. And if you don't know, you don't know. Most people don't even notice it. Nobody's ever asked me about that one. I don't have the NA one. I have the service symbol. When I was writing on these traditions formally like that, as I read through the how and why on the principles of each tradition, you know, it would go through all the tradition, all the principles, and then there would be anonymity. And I go to the second tradition, it would have the principles, and it would have anonymity, and the third and the fourth, and all the way to the 12th. And I was like, well, shoot, anonymity really is the foundation of all those traditions, like each one of them, all of them. How cool is that? And what anonymity means to me is not only are we all equal, and we all have an equal voice, and we have an equal right to recover, but for me to practice anonymity in the world means that I need to practice these principles no matter who's involved. Like, I don't get to just practice the principles because I like you and I'm getting along with you. It's almost more important for me to practice them when I don't like you and you're pissing me off. And I have to breathe and go, okay, what's the principle here that I need to practice besides anonymity? You know, is it unity? Is it fellowship? Is it love? I don't get to pick and choose who I get to practice principles with. I have to practice them in all my affairs. That's what the 12th step takes, and the 12th tradition tell me those go hand in hand. I need to practice them all the time to the best of my ability. Some days my ability is better than others, but as long as I do that, I'm probably going to be okay. I have been, you know, and the situation's probably going to be okay. The second tradition talks about for our group purpose. You know, I've been in business meetings where I've been fortunate to work with some people who really wanted to hear what everybody in the room had to say. And I love that, because I'm like, oh, you guys must be in recovery, you know, and they're not. But I learned that we don't have a lock on principles in the fellowship, which is really awesome. It just happens to be that I understand the language that we use in Narcotics Anonymous better than I ever understood the language of other methods of thought. And I love it when we can come together and make a decision that's based on everybody's voice. You know, there's one of the concepts talk about the small lone voice, you know, being able to hear that small lone voice. And that's real important. And people used that on me when I was new. When I was in a convention committee, I got to tell you, the bigger the committee, the more drama. And we had a situation with the convention committee, and they formed an ad hoc committee at the region, and somehow I got to be on it because I wanted to be in everything. I wanted to know how you guys did this stuff, how you stayed clean, how you dealt with each other and didn't use and didn't kill each other. I wanted to know all of it. So I was involved in everything I could get involved in. And there I was in this room, and I was actually the only female in the room at the time. And I had about maybe 2 years clean, if that. Everybody else had a minimum of 10 years in that room. And they were all talking about this situation, and somebody said, Karen, what do you think about the situation? I was like, and I had the sense to pray real quick. Okay, God, let me speak the truth. And I happened to be a witness of the situation that we were discussing. And I said, well, this is what I saw. And this is how it made me feel. And that's all I had to say. I just spoke my truth as I saw it, as I heard it. And I heard somebody say, out of the mouths of babes, because these people were all up and about, the convention policy and this, that, and the other thing. And all I said was, I saw this situation happen. And if I were new, I would have run, or I would have had a very low opinion. And they were like, ooh, yeah, okay. So the fact that they gave
the blazer,
the fact that they gave me a place at the table to speak my voice gave me I'll never forget that, obviously, but it gave me the opportunity to remember to give that place at the table to that small lone voice, that newcomer, or that shy person, or the person who just moved to the area and doesn't want to come in and say, well, y'all aren't doing it right, because where I came from, I was real careful about not doing that when I moved here from California, because I hated it when somebody came into my meetings in California and said, well, in such and such place where I got clean. I was like, fuck you, go back to your such and such place. Well, I don't have the right to tell them to do that, and I had to make sure that when I moved that I didn't do that, because I knew how it made me feel. So I stuck around long enough to learn how they did it in Georgia. And then I started participating and learning the ways here. It's all Narcotics Anonymous, but because we're all autonomous, and as long as we don't affect other groups or NA as a whole, we can do it how we see fit. And that's a really beautiful thing. And always, to this day, there are so many situations that I find myself in that I want to get all caught up in the complications, and I want to complicate it. And the tradition that brings me back and kind of ropes me back in is the fifth tradition. What is my primary purpose in this given situation? Whether it's work, or whether it's with my husband, or whether it's in a service committee, whatever it is, what is our primary purpose here today? Let's focus on that. And if I can bring myself back to that, and maybe help other people bring it back to, well, that's kind of an outside thing right now, or we'll deal with that next week. Let's focus on what we can do right now. I have seen that work so many times in so many situations. And, I do it with sponsees. I'm like, okay, what's your primary thing to do today? Well, I've got to do this. I'm like, no, what's the primary thing? Well, I have to stay clean. Ooh, that's a good one. I have to take my daughter to school. Okay, there you go. Let's focus on those primary things. All that other stuff will come later. That's what my sponsors have done with me. That's what I try to do with my sponsees. That's what I try to do in other situations. The other thing I'd like to say is, if you have not gotten this book yet, get it, read it, work through it with your sponsorship group or your sponsees or your sponsor. There is so many good things in here, and there's so much more about how we can apply it in our group and in our life, and in our service committees. I love the way this has been laid out. It talks about for the members and for the group and for the committees. This is huge. This is huge. And I don't know if y'all know, but we're working on another piece of literature that's going to be like a just for today thing. And it's all about those principles of the traditions, spiritual principle a day. I can't wait for that one to come out. I'm so excited every time we get new literature, and I got clean with people who said, we didn't have that when I got clean. Well, you know what? That's okay. You got clean, and thank you. I don't know how the hell you did it on just that little white book, but I carry that little white book around with me all the time. I have one in my car and one in my purse. But we have options today. We have more options today. And that's what Narcotics Anonymous has given me. It's given me options to live my life, to live a better life than I could ever have imagined. The fact that we get more and more literature, more and more tools to help us do that and help us do it better, I think that's a good thing. Now, that's my opinion. But apparently it's also pretty popular in the fellowship because we keep coming out with more literature. I thank you all so much for letting me participate in this workshop. The traditions are like my favorite thing ever. And I love you. Thank you so much for letting me share.
Thanks for sharing.
Thank you, Karen.
Thanks for
Karen.
sharing.
Thank you so much.
Love you, Karen. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Excellent message. Both of you.
If there's any extra time, would any participants care to share their own experience, strength, and hope on our workshop topic?
We have a hand raised. Ron W.
Ron.
Yes, I'm recovering from addiction. My name is Ron, and I just want
Can't hear you.
I'm sorry.
There you go.
I want to put my earpiece in. Give me a minute.
That's better.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very well. Thank you. I want to just take this time out to thank both of the speakers. Excellent, excellent, excellent on the 12 traditions. You know, just man, it was a pleasure to hear both speakers.
All right, now we can't hear you again.
I don't know what's going on.
Hear him? I can hear him.
Yeah, we can hear him, Josh.
All right, it was me. I muted the whole thing.
Okay, you good now? You good? Okay.
I'm good.
All right.
Sorry.
Again, like I said, thank you. It's all right. And so, you know, the traditions, you know, you guys have really covered a lot of ground, you know. I mean, the first tradition, you know, the unity of our fellowship, I do have the guiding principles, and you know, I grew up in the first tradition in the basic text, you know, how unity, you know, I like the part about the group being made, how the group is stable, you know, our entire fellowship, you know, perishes and the individual could die, you know, from just the simplicity of the commitments when I'm asked to take on a commitment, to know what the commitment means, to show up on time and be ready. I heard one of the speakers talk about that. The unconditional love and the acceptance and the anonymity and the serenity, the unity, man, and the selflessness and the principles that are in the first traditions. To me, the first tradition is the most important tradition, because without the groups being stable, without the unconditional love, is that we are loved and cared for who we are, not in spite of who we are. You know, what's best for the group is best for the individual. Like, I don't have to agree with everything, and I don't have to like everyone, but I still need you. I cannot recover by myself. You know, we've seen two members that didn't normally get along, but come together to help a newcomer. Like, that's powerful stuff. Before I can even get into money and prestige and all that, I need to understand that everybody's welcome. You know, the anonymity goes on to talk about anyone may join us. You know, the third tradition, that all addicts are equal in obtaining the relief they're seeking from their addiction. All addicts can recover in this program on an equal basis, and the third tradition guarantees it. You know, it's just all throughout the traditions, you know, goes into anonymity and how everyone is welcome. Newcomers can just, it was a very boring topic when I was new. You know, I didn't want to hear about tradition. I want to hear about the alleyway. I want to hear crack and heroin and hands over the fire. And I didn't understand that once I got involved with service and sponsorship to find out how Narcotics Anonymous works. You know, I'm going to wrap it up and just wanted to just say thank you, because it's people like the both of you that shared that help build on my understanding of, like you said, not just what Narcotics Anonymous has given me, but what you've given me to take outside. You know, and then when I go into other arenas, I have some things to give. I have something to bring because of what you guys have deposited in me. 3 of my family members got clean as a result of me just following direction, just keep coming back, just don't pick up the drugs. And one day at a time, my daughter's mother came in, the women in the fellowship gave me a meeting list with phone numbers. They said when she's ready to surrender, tell her to call one of us. You know, I had to move out because she was still using. I got clean. About 9 months down the road, she made that call, made her first Narcotics Anonymous meeting because the group was stable, because unconditional love was exhibited. You see, I'm telling you, the first tradition is the foundation. You know, everything's in there. You know, I'm going to close with this. I think tradition 1 and 5 is like 2 people shaking hands, because although our 5th tradition talks about, you know, how our group carries the message and all that, but that's true, and we do it in a number of ways, whether it's literature or people sharing or whatever. But the first tradition is what people see when you got PI, well, it used to be PI, now it's PR, that's going out into the schools and going into the playgrounds and going into these facilities and telling those people about Narcotics Anonymous, who we are, what we do, and where we are. Well, the real message is, what are the people going to see when they come to your home group? You see, they're going to see us hugging one another. They're going to see us supporting one another. They're going to see the selflessness and the generosity, you know, to go forward if you would like a cup of coffee. That's the message. You know, it's one thing to verbally say it, but it's what you, actions speak louder than words. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for sharing.
And we have Adam.
Hey, I'm Adam. I'm an addict. And
Yeah.
thank you guys both for coming in and talking about traditions. I think it was GRCNA maybe last year or year before where I was asked to speak on traditions, and I know like how nervous that made me to like, you know, it feels like such a big topic. To like, especially like, I mean, I only had like 3 traditions, and to sit here and cover all 12 traditions is awesome. You guys did such a great job. Just really just thank you so much for sharing your experience, strength, and hope. I can tell you, like, my first home group, and Karen, as you were talking, you can't see it because I have my background, but I have my my green and gold right here, my It Works How and Why, sitting like right here at my desk. My very first home group in San Francisco was we did a step. It was a step study and a tradition study where we read out of this book. And so I got a really early introduction to steps and traditions, but it really wasn't until I started doing service in the program that it really all kind of, you know, it's kind of like going to school, I guess. Like, you know, you sit in there and you hear all this stuff, and you know, we would share about it, and I would listen to people talk about it, but it really like didn't start to come alive for me until I started doing service, until I started doing kind of like some really big service, and especially area service. I remember the first time like sitting on a committee and thinking like, oh, you know, I'm supposed to lead these guys, and I'm supposed to have all these all these answers, and you know, and it really became clear to me that like, I need to like take a step back. Like, I'm just a trusted servant, you know, that second tradition, like our leaders are but trusted servants, you know. And for our group conscience, that is one of my the reason I have this book right here is there are so many times when I've done area service that I've had to like go back through here and like read this book. I was policy chair, I've been area chair, I've done a whole bunch of different service things that I've had to like read through this book like multiple times. Before the Guiding Principles book came out, I've just, you know, and every time I would come to my sponsor with some like major thing in area, you know, of like, I'm not sure if I should still be here, you know, all this stuff, like I'm ready to just walk away. My sponsor would just be like, maybe you should like go and take a look at those traditions again and just read like, you know, maybe like, what does the first tradition say about that, about unity? Like, you know, personal recovery depends on NA unity. And if you leave the area, then, you know, if you're not doing service, then how does that affect, you know, the unity? And, you know, it just blew my mind. Like it blew my mind to have people begin to like talk to me from a place of talking about their traditions and how to apply them to doing service, you know. And I love that, you know, the great thing about service in NA is that it really isn't about just me, right? Thank God, it's just like a major relief that our decisions are made from a group conscience, you know, guided by a higher power, not by any individual, not by, you know, personalities. We talk about that all the time. We put principles before personalities. And, you know, for me, that has been one of the biggest driving forces in my recovery, is to continue to remind myself that even when people challenge me and I'm in service positions or feeling challenged, that it really is, it's my responsibility to put the principles of this program before my own personality, and even before like the personalities of other people, like good or bad. Like there have been times in an area where someone that I love, you know, that I have a great, wonderful relationship with, I've had to have a disagreement with them. And, you know, and that meant I had to put the principles first, even before like their personality and my personality. Even though I love them and I have a close relationship, you know, I've had to like say, like, I don't agree with that. I don't, you know, and that doesn't seem to fit, you know, what we're working on here. And on the contrary, I've had people, kind of like Lisa, you were saying, I've had people who I don't particularly care for, that an area that I have listened to them and I was like, well, I have to agree with like what I'm hearing over here, you know, like, because that to me is like what recovery is about, is like, you and I may not see eye to eye on a lot of things, but when it comes to the program of Narcotics Anonymous and when it comes to applying these principles, I am like that. I am going to apply the principles first. Like my recovery comes first. And it really is great to be able to then step outside of the rooms of NA and begin to try, right? Like I'm not perfect. I'm not, you know, I'm not an expert at it, but I try to practice principles in all my affairs. And it's a constant practice, right? It's a constant reminder. Like I have to constantly stay in that place of remaining teachable and remembering that I don't have all the answers. And that's, you know, I really love what you said, Lisa, about like, you know, this is not, you know, everything talks about we. Our whole program is a program of we. And, you know, thank God for all that. I'm just glad that I don't have to have all the answers. And again, thank you guys so much for coming out and being and sharing your experience, sharing that hope with the traditions. I know it's hard and you guys did a great job. So thank you so much for doing that. Thanks.
Thank you, Adam.
Thanks, Adam.
All right, guys.
I would like to thank everyone. I would like to thank today's workshop speakers and everyone who attended and participated. Let's close with a moment of silence, followed by the we version of the Serenity Prayer. God, grant us the serenity
To accept
to
it.
accept the things that we
And
cannot
change
The courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Good job, ladies. Awesome.
Great meeting.
Good job, Tessa.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Thanks,
job.
everybody.
Thanks, Karen and Lisa.
Thank you, Karen.
Yeah.
Thank God for
Thanks,
your
thanks for the
service.
trusted servant.
Thank all of you.
Good to see you, Lisa.
You too, Karen.
Yes,
Thanks for
Lisa.
sharing, man. That worked out perfectly.
I know it
Hey,
did.
Lisa,
Yes.
when are you going to come see us?
I don't know.
Lisa, do you have the same number?
I do.
Okay, I'll call you. Love you much.
I love you too. Who's
We're
she?
having a celebration on the 27th, Lisa.
Yeah, where are you? I'm trying to find you. I hear you. There you are.
Robin. Yeah, you remember me? Yeah. Look,
I
there's
hear you
Travis.
talking. I'm
There's
like, where
Travis.
are you? Hey, on the 27th.
On the 27th, we're having a fish fry.
I know. I need to get your phone number. Hold on.
Okay. Yeah, because I done called Lane and told him, I was like, you need to call her. I don't have her number.
You'll
She
be
ain't
in Blue Ridge.
Oh crap! I won't be here. Still give me. Hey, if you guys don't mind, let me get Dara's number real quick. Go ahead.
478
Uh-huh.
796
Okay.
3137.
Okay. Thanks, honey. Thank you. I'm gonna text you in a few minutes. I'll put it in my phone. So I've moved to Warner Robins, and I've in mid-November, but I only been to one meeting.
It was a celebration.
It was a celebration in person, and my sponsee spoke, and I've just been doing my home group by Zoom still, and found another really cool meeting in North Georgia by Zoom. And but I really need to get out, and I have like probably 25 masks. It's not like I can't go out safely. So I need to.
We have masks and Lysol wipes, and we social distance, and we wipe our chairs down, or we in our doors. And
yeah, I'm gonna be in Blue Ridge that weekend for my my good friend Estelle is celebrating 20 years. So, but man,
right, we're there Monday through Saturday, Lisa.
I know.
It'd be nice. Thank you for your service.
Hey, I have been called out on a live recording.
I told you we were gonna have fun.
I've gotta be in another room, so I'm gonna have to.
Thanks
shut her
everybody.
down.
Thanks for your service, Josh. See ya. Bye, Dara. Thanks.
Love you guys.
Love you.